In the weeks that followed, Lauren Wilson struggled to keep the emotional walls she had carefully constructed intact. Despite her best efforts, cracks began to form, and she found herself drawn into the enigma that was Daniel Martin. He remained guarded, but there were fleeting moments when fragments of his true self broke through. While Lauren tried to maintain her distance, she couldn't deny the growing desire to understand the man who had so drastically altered her life. At the same time, Daniel wrestled with feelings he couldn't articulate. He had entered this arrangement believing it would be straightforward, structured, and devoid of complications. Yet he was beginning to realize how wrong he had been. Lauren was no longer just a participant in his meticulously crafted plan. Her presence unnerved him in ways he wasn't prepared to face, and the fear of losing control over his emotions was unsettling. The following week brought another milestone, a routine checkup for the pregnancy. Lauren woke early, her thoughts a jumble of anticipation and apprehension. The months were slipping by faster than she had anticipated, and the thought of seeing the babies now undeniably real on the screen filled her with equal parts excitement and anxiety. Would Daniel join her again this time, as he had previously? She wasn't sure. When she came downstairs for breakfast, she found Jessica, Daniel's assistant, discussing the day's schedule with him. His focus shifted to Lauren as she entered. "Are you ready?" Daniel asked, his tone even as he set aside the folder he'd been reviewing. "Ready enough," Lauren replied, masking her unease with a calm front. "Good, we'll go together," he said, his words leaving no room for debate. Lauren followed him to the car, the silence between them feeling heavier than usual. Daniel, ever composed, seemed preoccupied, his expression unreadable. Perhaps, she thought, he was as nervous as she was, though admitting such a thing would be unthinkable for a man like him. At the clinic, the doctor greeted them warmly and gestured for Lauren to lie down as he prepared the ultrasound equipment. "Today we'll get a clearer look at the baby," the doctor said, his tone light and reassuring as he adjusted the monitor. Lauren braced herself, trying to ignore the cold gel being applied to her abdomen. When the transducer began its path across her skin, she held her breath, the suspense nearly overwhelming. Daniel stood beside her, arms crossed, his gaze fixed on the screen with a focus so intense it was almost palpable. Then, the sound emerged, a steady, rhythmic beat. But it wasn't alone. Another heartbeat joined in harmony. "Well, here's something we didn't catch last time," the doctor announced with a pleased expression. "You're expecting twins." Lauren's eyes widened, her breath catching in her throat. "Twins," she echoed, her voice barely above a whisper. The revelation hit her like a tidal wave, a blend of shock, wonder, and disbelief. She instinctively placed a hand on her abdomen, as though grounding herself in the moment. Daniel, for once, seemed at a loss for words. His stoic mask slipped, replaced by an expression Lauren had never seen before: awe. He leaned closer to the screen, his voice quiet but firm. "Two?" he asked, seeking confirmation. "Two," the doctor replied with a smile. "Both appear healthy and are developing well." For a moment the room was filled only with the sound of those heartbeats, their rhythm a powerful reminder of the lives taking shape. For Lauren, the moment was transformative. Try as she might, she could no longer deny the connection she felt to the tiny beings growing inside her. The drive back to Daniel's mansion was different from their usual tense silences. This time the quiet carried a weight of unspoken thoughts and emotions. It was Lauren who finally broke it. "You don't strike me as someone who's easily surprised," she said, her tone light, hoping to ease the tension. Daniel exhaled, his gaze fixed on the road ahead. "I'm not," he admitted, then paused. "But this is different." Lauren studied him, intrigued by his candid response. Daniel wasn't one to wear his emotions openly, yet now he seemed genuinely reflective. "Are you scared?" she asked softly, her voice barely above a whisper. He glanced at her briefly before returning his eyes to the road. "No," he said slowly, impressed, maybe. "Knowing that in a matter of months, two entirely new lives will be here, relying on me, It's overwhelming in a way I didn't expect." Lauren felt a pang in her chest. She knew the arrangement meant she would have to part with the babies, but hearing Daniel speak about them with such care made it harder to ignore how deeply she was already attached to them. "They depend on me too," she said, her voice tinged with vulnerability. "At least for now." Daniel nodded, his voice softer than she had ever heard it. "I know, and that's why I want to make sure you're okay, Lauren, not just physically but emotionally. That matters to me." His sincerity left her momentarily speechless. For the first time, she felt that they were truly in this together, two individuals navigating an extraordinary situation, unsure of where it might lead. Later that evening, Lauren Wilson stood on the terrace, her gaze lost in the distant horizon. The cool breeze brushed her skin as she contemplated the whirlwind of changes her life had taken. She heard footsteps behind her and turned to see Daniel Martin approaching. There was an unusual hesitancy in his stride, a rare crack in his typically unshakable confidence. "I can't stop thinking about what the doctor said today," he began, his voice quieter than usual as he sat beside her. "Two babies, two futures." Lauren glanced at him, surprised by his candor. "It's a lot of responsibility, isn't it?" she asked, her tone soft but curious. Daniel's gaze remained fixed on the horizon. "It's more than just responsibility," he admitted. "This is the first time in my life I feel like something truly important is out of my control. I can't calculate who these two will become. I can't shape the people they'll grow into." Lauren felt a shiver run through her. Hearing Daniel admit to such vulnerability was startling. Like her, he was wrestling with the uncertainty of the future, a future neither of them could predict or fully control. "Sometimes not knowing can be a blessing," she said, her voice thoughtful. "It leaves room for things you never saw coming, things you never dared to imagine." Daniel turned to look at her, his expression pensive, as though weighing the truth of her words. For the first time, it seemed he might be willing to accept that not everything in life could be planned. In the days that followed, news of the twins brought an unexpected sense of vitality to Daniel's mansion. Jessica began making adjustments to the nursery, redesigning it to accommodate two little ones. Lauren observed the transformations with mixed emotions. The arrangement was clear she would have to part with the babies, but she was starting to grasp how much harder it would be than she had anticipated. As preparations continued, Lauren and Daniel began to realize that the agreement binding them was evolving into something much more intricate. The twins, though not yet born, were already reshaping their lives in ways neither could have foreseen. Daniel, though still methodical and reserved, began to reveal small but significant gestures that hinted at a depth Lauren hadn't expected. One afternoon, after a routine medical appointment, Daniel insisted on escorting Lauren to the car. It was a task he would typically delegate to Jessica or another staff member, yet here he was, opening the car door for her. "Are you feeling okay?" he asked, his tone unusually gentle. Lauren nodded, caught off guard by the gesture. "Yes, I'm fine." "Thank you," she replied. On the drive back to the mansion, the familiar silence between them felt different. It was Daniel who broke it this time. "Is there anything you need?" he asked, his voice genuine. "Anything that could make you more comfortable?" Lauren studied him carefully, searching for signs of ulterior motives. What she saw instead was sincerity, though she wasn't sure how to interpret it yet. "Nothing comes to mind at the moment, but thank you for asking," she said cautiously. He gave a brief nod and focused back on the road, yet Lauren couldn't shake the feeling that something about Daniel was shifting. Despite her lingering reservations, she began to sense that his concern for her was real. Back at the mansion, Lauren noticed more signs of change. One evening, she discovered a neatly wrapped package waiting for her on the bed. Inside were new pillows and blankets, accompanied by a note written in Daniel's precise handwriting to help you rest better. The small gesture brought an unexpected smile to her face. It was simple but carried a weight of thoughtfulness she hadn't anticipated. Later, as she sat in the living room sipping tea, Daniel entered. He settled into the armchair across from her, his demeanor relaxed but still bearing his usual composed edge. "Did you like what I left in your room?" he asked, his tone direct. Lauren nodded. "I did. It was thoughtful of you," she said, her curiosity about his sudden attentiveness growing. "Good," he replied firmly. "I want to make sure you're comfortable. That matters to me." Lauren tilted her head slightly, her expression skeptical. While she appreciated his kindness, a veil of mistrust still lingered. "You're changing, Daniel, or at least it seems that way. But I don't know why," she said bluntly. For a moment Daniel appeared to wrestle with her words. Then, with an uncharacteristic sigh, he confessed, "Maybe you're right. Maybe I am changing. But the truth is, I don't know how to be different. I'm not used to caring." The honesty in his voice took Lauren by surprise, and for a fleeting moment Daniel seemed as taken aback by his words as she was. It was rare to see him allow even a glimpse of vulnerability, yet here he was, offering a piece of himself he normally kept guarded. That night, as Lauren stood on the terrace, gazing up at the stars, Daniel's words echoed in her mind. He was not the man she had expected. Though he remained complex and difficult to unravel, there was something deeply human beneath his carefully constructed exterior. Whether that was a good or bad thing, she still wasn't sure. For now, she could only wonder where this uncharted path might lead and what it would mean for both of them. The next morning, Daniel Martin did something unusual. He joined Lauren Wilson for breakfast. His expression was composed, yet there was a subtle tension beneath the surface. "There's something I'd like to discuss," he began, his tone direct as always. Lauren looked up, intrigued. "What is it?" she asked cautiously. He hesitated, a rare crack in his typically confident demeanor. "I know you still don't trust me, and I don't blame you. Trust has never been easy for me. I've spent my life building walls, keeping people at a distance. It's made me someone who isn't exactly easy to deal with." Lauren stayed quiet, her gaze steady, sensing he needed to continue. "I've learned to rely on no one, to make sure no one gets close enough to hurt me," he admitted. "But with you, with everything we're creating, I'm starting to think I might have been wrong." She blinked, startled by the vulnerability in his words. It wasn't like Daniel to reveal his emotions so openly. "We all have our walls, Daniel," she said softly, her voice carrying a note of understanding. "But that doesn't mean we have to live behind them forever." He nodded, his expression pensive. "Maybe you're right. But change, real change, has never come easily for me." Lauren offered a small, knowing smile. "No one ever said it would be easy." Later that day, Daniel surprised her again by suggesting a walk in the garden. At first, their conversation was light, focused on trivial topics. But soon the discussion shifted to the twins. "Have you thought about names?" Daniel asked unexpectedly. Lauren glanced at him, caught off guard. "No, not yet. I thought you'd want to decide that on your own," she said honestly. "I think it would make sense to choose together," he replied. Lauren stared at him, surprised by his openness. It was clear he was trying, in his own way, to bridge the gap between them. While a part of her remained cautious, she couldn't help but acknowledge the effort he was making. As the sun began to set, they found themselves sitting on a bench, watching the sky shift into warm, golden hues. "I never imagined I'd be here," Lauren murmured, more to herself than to him, "doing something like this." "Neither did I," Daniel admitted with a faint smile. "But maybe this is exactly where we're meant to be." She turned to look at him, noticing for the first time that Daniel's usual guarded demeanor seemed to have softened. Perhaps, just perhaps, this wasn't merely a transaction. Maybe it was the beginning of something deeper, something neither of them had anticipated. The morning began like many others, but Lauren felt the weight of her pregnancy in every step she took. Months of carrying the twins had left her body tired, though her spirit remained determined. Daniel, as usual, was engrossed in work, his focus buried in stacks of documents. Over time, their frequent interactions had developed into a quiet comfort, but this day was different. Just before lunch, Lauren felt a sudden, sharp pain. At first, she brushed it off as an ordinary ache, but the intensity quickly escalated. Alarmed, she called out for Jessica, who immediately recognized the urgency of the situation. "Daniel needs to know," Jessica said firmly as she helped Lauren to a chair. "This could be the start of labor." Lauren nodded, her breaths coming in uneven gasps as another wave of pain gripped her. Jessica rushed to find Daniel, who arrived within minutes, his composed exterior shaken by genuine concern. "Lauren, what's happening?" he asked, his voice unusually urgent as he approached. "I think it's time," she said between labored breaths. "The babies are coming." For a brief moment, Daniel appeared frozen. But then, as if a switch had flipped, he sprang into action. He called for the car, instructed Jessica to gather essentials, and ensured everything was ready for a swift departure. "We're leaving now," he said, his tone steady, but tinged with an urgency Lauren had never heard before. The drive to the hospital passed in a blur of emotions. Lauren focused on controlling her breathing, while Daniel sat beside her, his attention fixed on her every move. Without thinking, he reached for her hand, a gesture that surprised them both. "We're almost there," he said gently, giving her hand a reassuring squeeze. "You're going to be okay. We'll be okay." Though Lauren didn't respond, she found unexpected comfort in his words. At the hospital, events moved quickly. A prepared medical team, thanks to Daniel's meticulous foresight, immediately took charge. Lauren was rushed into the delivery room, and despite staff insisting he wait outside, Daniel refused to leave. "I'm staying," he said firmly, gripping her hand. "I'm not going anywhere." Hours passed, each moment fraught with intensity. Daniel, unaccustomed to such raw emotion, found himself awestruck by Lauren's resilience. When the first cry echoed through the room, his heart raced. "It's a boy," the doctor announced with a smile, "healthy and strong." Daniel watched, breathless, as the tiny baby was gently cleaned and swaddled. Before he could fully absorb the moment, a second cry filled the air. "And a girl," the doctor added. "His sister." Exhausted but glowing, Lauren looked at the two babies as they were carefully wrapped in blankets. She ached to hold them, though she knew the moment would be fleeting. Daniel, uncharacteristically still, seemed mesmerized as he stepped closer to her. Taking her hand, he whispered, "You were incredible. Thank you." Tears slipped down Lauren's cheeks, though she couldn't say if they were from joy, relief, or the looming knowledge of what lay ahead. When the babies were finally placed in her arms, she cradled them gently, their tiny forms warm and fragile against her. She studied their features, their delicate fingers, their soft, closed eyes, and felt a love so profound it seemed impossible. In that instant, Lauren knew she could never truly let them go, for they were already etched into her soul. Daniel Martin remained silently at Lauren Wilson's side, his usual stoic demeanor replaced by an expression she had never seen before. When he finally held the baby boy in his arms, the rigid lines of his face softened, revealing a connection that went far beyond the idea of an heir. It was life in its rawest, most profound form, a bond he hadn't known he was capable of. When he cradled the baby girl, Daniel closed his eyes for a moment, as though trying to sear the memory into his soul. When he finally looked up, his gaze found Lauren's, and in his eyes she saw something she hadn't expected: heartfelt gratitude. "They're perfect," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Lauren nodded, still holding the boy tightly. Tears streamed down her face, unbidden and unchecked, but for the first time she didn't feel the need to hide them. That night, as Lauren rested in her hospital room, Daniel couldn't bring himself to leave the nursery observation area. He stood at the glass, watching the twins sleep, a storm of emotions swirling within him. For the first time, he realized these children weren't just an extension of his legacy or a means to secure his future. They were his connection to something greater, something he had long kept at bay: true, unguarded love. Jessica appeared beside him, carrying a steaming cup of coffee. Placing it gently on a nearby table, she broke the quiet with a soft question. "Mr. Martin, are you all right?" Daniel turned to her, his expression almost unrecognizable. "For the first time in years, I think I am," he replied, his voice steady yet reflective. Jessica gave him a small, knowing smile before retreating, leaving him alone with his thoughts and his children. Meanwhile, Lauren woke in her room, the joy of the day replaced by a heavy loneliness. She couldn't deny the happiness she felt, but the contract still loomed over everything. The twins, who had so quickly become the center of her world, weren't hers to keep. That reality hung over her like a shadow. But then the door opened, and Daniel stepped inside, carrying both babies in his arms. His presence was different now, as though the weight of the day had transformed him in some irrevocable way. He approached her bed, handing her the boy before sitting beside her with the girl still nestled in his embrace. "I don't know how," he began, his voice quiet, "but this has changed everything." Lauren nodded, her throat tightening. No matter how difficult the path ahead would be, she knew this moment was a miracle she would carry forever. Months later, Daniel's mansion was steeped in an almost oppressive silence. The weeks since the twins' birth had been filled with both joy and anguish for Lauren. She loved the babies more than she ever thought possible, but the terms of their agreement were clear. Her time there was coming to an end. Today was the day she would have to walk away. As she packed the few belongings she had into a small suitcase, Lauren glanced at the twins' cribs. They slept peacefully, unaware of the storm brewing in her heart. Tears threatened to fall, but she bit them back, determined not to let her final moments be marked by weakness. She reminded herself of the contract, convincing herself it was the right thing to do. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Jessica entered, her face lined with concern. "Is everything ready?" she asked gently. Lauren nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. "Yes, thank you for everything, Jessica." The assistant hesitated, as though weighing her words. "Are you sure this is what you want? It seems like. There's more between you and Mr. Martin." Lauren forced a brittle smile. "It's not about what I want, it's about what was agreed upon." Jessica didn't press further. She simply nodded and promised to inform Daniel that Lauren was ready. When Lauren descended the grand staircase, her suitcase in hand, she found Daniel waiting for her in the foyer. His posture was stiff, his eyes fixed on her. The man standing before her was nothing like the cold, calculating figure she had met months ago. He seemed vulnerable, almost as if he were bracing himself for a loss he didn't know how to bear. "Everything's ready," Lauren said, breaking the silence. Daniel didn't respond immediately. He took a step closer, his gaze unwavering. "Are you really leaving?" he asked, his voice low and rough with emotion. Lauren's chest tightened, but she nodded. "That was the deal. I fulfilled my part. Now it's time for me to go." For a moment Daniel was motionless. Then, without a word, he reached into the inside pocket of his coat and pulled out the contract. Holding it lightly between his fingers, he looked down at the document as though it were utterly insignificant. "This contract," he began, his voice stronger now, "should never have been the thing that defined what's happening between us." Before Lauren could process his words, Daniel tore the paper into shreds. The pieces fluttered to the floor, the sound of ripping echoing through the room like a declaration. "I don't want you to leave, Lauren," he said, his voice steady but deeply vulnerable. "I don't want this to end here." A few weeks later, an intimate ceremony unfolded in the serene gardens of Daniel's mansion. Only a select few were present: close friends, trusted staff like Jessica, and those who had been witnesses to the couple's transformative journey. The day was nothing short of idyllic. The sunlight filtered gently through the trees, and a soft breeze carried the delicate fragrance of the flowers that adorned the space. Lauren Wilson wore a gown that was simple yet elegant, its understated beauty mirroring her quiet strength. Daniel Martin stood by her side, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit that reflected his newfound openness. The twins, dressed in matching outfits, rested adorably in Jessica's arms, her face glowing with joy as tears welled in her eyes. As Daniel and Lauren exchanged vows, their words carried the weight of their shared past and the promise of their future. Daniel pledged to be the partner she deserved, someone steadfast and unwavering, regardless of life's challenges. Lauren, in turn, vowed to trust him, to help him grow into the best version of himself. Each promise was heartfelt, a reflection of their journey toward understanding and love. When the ceremony concluded, the pair stood in an embrace, each holding one of the twins. Jessica, overcome with emotion, remarked, "You make a beautiful family." And it was true. For the first time, Daniel, Lauren, and their children were exactly where they were meant to be, a family forged not by convenience, but by choice and love. In the days and weeks that followed, life resumed its natural rhythm, interspersed with both challenges and moments of deep joy. Together, Daniel and Lauren created a home filled with warmth and laughter for their children. Sleepless nights became routine, their exhaustion tempered by the tiny moments of happiness that only parenthood could bring: a baby's giggle, the sight of two small hands reaching out, and the comforting stillness of holding their children close. One evening, as Lauren gently laid the twins in their cribs, Daniel appeared silently in the doorway. He crossed the room and, without speaking, wrapped his arms around her in a firm, comforting embrace. Lauren leaned into him, resting her head against his chest. The sound of his steady heartbeat had become a source of solace. "Thank you for not giving up on me," Daniel said softly, his voice carrying a vulnerability she had come to cherish. "And thank you for teaching me to trust again," she replied, her words filled with quiet sincerity. Months later, on a bright afternoon, Daniel and Lauren found themselves in the garden, sitting side by side as they watched the twins play on a soft blanket spread across the grass. The air was filled with the sound of the baby's laughter, pure, unfiltered joy that seemed to echo through every corner of the estate. Lauren turned to Daniel, observing the contented smile that lit up his face. "Are you happy?" she asked, her tone both curious and earnest. He glanced at her, then at the twins, before replying. "I never thought happiness like this was possible," he said, his voice steady. "You've given me more than I ever realized I needed: a family, a sense of purpose, love." Lauren smiled, her heart swelling with a peace she hadn't felt in years. "And you've shown me that love can be built even through struggles and uncertainties. Thank you for that." Their quiet moment was interrupted by the babbling sounds of their children. The twins, their voices filled with excitement, uttered something that resembled Mama and Dada. Daniel and Lauren laughed, overcome with emotion, and leaned closer to the little ones. They gathered their children into their arms, holding them tightly as if to preserve the magic of that moment forever. It was a simple, unremarkable scene by many standards, but for Daniel and Lauren, it was everything. It was proof that amidst imperfection, love and understanding could flourish. Their life wasn't without its challenges, but it was filled with the kind of hope and connection that made every obstacle worth overcoming, and that was all they truly needed as they moved forward, together. The days at Daniel's mansion transformed into a kaleidoscope of laughter, tiny milestones, and an undercurrent of undeniable affection that bound the family closer together. As the twins, Ella and Ethan, grew, they became mirrors reflecting the love Daniel Martin and Lauren Wilson were rediscovering in each other. One morning, as sunlight poured through the nursery windows, Ethan wobbled on unsteady legs, his little hands reaching toward his father. Daniel, who had been reviewing documents at a nearby desk, froze, his attention captivated. He quickly set the papers aside and dropped to his knees, extending his arms. "You've got this, champ," Daniel encouraged, his voice filled with an excitement that made Lauren peek in from the hallway. Ethan giggled, his determination outweighing his balance. With a triumphant stumble, he fell into Daniel's arms. The room filled with laughter as Daniel hoisted the boy high into the air, his joy palpable. "Did you see that, Lauren?" he exclaimed, his eyes lighting up as he turned toward her. our little man's first steps. Lauren, her face glowing with pride, walked over and kissed Ethan's head. "You're such a brave boy," she cooed before meeting Daniel's gaze. "And I've never seen you like this." Daniel pulled her into a side embrace, still holding Ethan close. "I never thought something so small could mean so much. It's moments like these that make me realize how lucky I am." Lauren rested her head on his shoulder, watching as Ella crawled toward them, determined not to be left out. Their lives, once defined by meticulous plans and contracts, had become beautifully unpredictable. Every giggle, every stumble, every whispered mama or dada reminded them of what truly mattered. As the twins grew, so did Daniel's company. The business, once his sole focus, now served a greater purpose. His drive to succeed was no longer fueled by ambition alone, but by the desire to build a future for his family. One evening, as the children slept soundly, Lauren found Daniel in his home office. Papers were scattered across the desk, illuminated by the soft glow of a lamp. He was leaning back in his chair, his eyes closed, a rare look of contentment on his face. Hard at work, or deep in thought, Lauren teased, stepping into the room with 2 cups of tea. Daniel opened his eyes, smiling as he accepted the cup she offered. "A little of both. I was just thinking about how much has changed and how much more I want to do." Lauren sat beside him, sipping her tea. "You've already accomplished so much, Daniel. The company's thriving, and you've created a beautiful life for us." "But there's more," he said, his voice firm but tender. "I don't just want success for myself. I want to leave something for them, for Ella and Ethan. I want them to be proud of their father." Lauren reached for his hand, her touch grounding him. "They already are. And so am I. You've become more than just a businessman, Daniel. You're a father, a partner, a man who's learning to love deeply." Her words struck a chord, and Daniel leaned in, kissing her softly. "I couldn't have done any of this without you, Lauren. You've given me a reason to be better." Months later, the twins turned 2, and their vibrant personalities began to shine. Ella, with her boundless curiosity, loved exploring the garden, often dragging her father along to inspect flowers and chase butterflies. Ethan, quieter but no less determined, enjoyed building towers with blocks, always looking to his mother for approval. One afternoon, the family gathered in the living room. Ella was perched on Daniel's shoulders, squealing with delight, while Ethan sat in Lauren's lap, his tiny hands clapping to a song she was singing. "Who knew we'd become a traveling circus?" Daniel joked, spinning in circles to Ella's amusement. Lauren laughed, the sound filling the room with warmth. "I think we make a pretty good team." Daniel stopped spinning and looked at her, his expression softening. "We do, don't we?" He set Ella down, walked over to Lauren, and pulled her to her feet, still holding her hands. "You've given me something I never knew I needed: a family. And I want to make sure you always know how much I love you." Lauren's eyes glistened with tears, her heart swelling at his words. "Daniel, you've shown me that love can grow, even in the most unexpected places. And I love you more than I ever thought possible." As they embraced, the twins clapped, their innocent joy mirroring the love their parents had found in one another. Over the next few years, the bond between Daniel and Lauren deepened. Their love, once tentative, had become a fire that burned steadily, illuminating every corner of their lives. Daniel's company reached new heights with innovative projects and partnerships that reflected his renewed passion. At home, he remained devoted, often pausing during meetings to join impromptu tea parties or watch the twins perform their latest dance moves. Lauren, too, found fulfillment. She rediscovered her love for painting, often capturing moments of their life together on canvas. One evening, as Daniel walked into her studio, he found her working on a piece of portrait of their family, bathed in the golden light of a setting sun. "It's beautiful," he said, wrapping his arms around her waist from behind. Lauren turned, smiling. "It's our story. One I never thought I'd be lucky enough to tell." Daniel kissed her temple, his voice a whisper. It's only the beginning. On their 5th anniversary, Daniel planned a surprise for Lauren. As the sun dipped below the horizon, he led her to the garden where a small table was set, surrounded by twinkling lights and fresh flowers. "What's all this?" Lauren asked, her eyes wide with wonder. "A celebration," Daniel said, pulling out a chair for her. "For everything we've built together." As they dined under the stars, laughter and shared memories filled the air. Daniel reached for her hand, his gaze steady. "Lauren, I want you to know that every decision, every step we've taken has led me to you, and I wouldn't change a thing." Tears welled in Lauren's eyes as she squeezed his hand. "You've given me a life I never imagined, Daniel, a love I didn't know was possible. Thank you." That night, as they danced under the moonlight, their hearts beat as one, the love between them stronger than ever. The twins, peeking from a window, giggled at the sight of their parents twirling in the garden. "Mommy and Daddy are in love," Ella whispered to Ethan, who nodded solemnly before breaking into a grin. And they were. Daniel and Lauren's love story was not without its challenges, but it was real, enduring, and filled with the kind of hope that inspired all who witnessed it. It was a testament to the power of love, family, and the belief that even the most unexpected beginnings could lead to a happily ever after. If this heartwarming story touched your heart, don't forget to show your love by giving this video a thumbs up, subscribing to our channel, and sharing it with your friends and family. Together we can spread the beauty of stories like this to inspire and uplift everyone around us. In this incredible tale, we witness the transformative power of love, trust, and resilience. Daniel Martin and Lauren Wilson's journey wasn't just about fulfilling a contract, it was about finding unexpected joy and purpose through their children, Ella and Ethan. From tentative beginnings rooted in necessity, their relationship grew into an unbreakable bond forged through shared challenges, tender moments, and unwavering commitment to their family. Their story reminds us that love often emerges in the most surprising ways, transcending fears, past wounds, and doubts. It's a journey of growth, where two people learn to open their hearts, embrace vulnerability, and rediscover the meaning of family. Watching Daniel evolve from a reserved businessman to a devoted father and partner, and Lauren find strength and purpose in love and motherhood, is a testament to the power of second chances. Now, it's your turn to share your thoughts. What did you think of Daniel and Lauren's story? Which moment touched you the most, and why? Let us know in the comments below. We love hearing your reflections. And don't stop here. Subscribe to our channel for more moving stories that celebrate life's most meaningful moments. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss an update, and share this story with those who could use a little extra hope and love in their day. Thank you for being a part of our community and for letting us share this beautiful journey with you.